We're heading into February, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matt Dinerman, the track announcer here at Oaklawn Park, and this is Out of the Starting Gate, our second episode, and I am alongside, once again, Cody Caudill. They call Ron Anderson the jockey agent of the stars, but you are the jockey agent of a star with Rafael Bejarano, who had a big week, and also Keith Asmussen, who was a stakes winner. That's why we had to have you back on for a second week.
Yeah, we chose a good time to get this series started. I'll say that.
I think maybe this might be a good luck charm for you. So maybe you can carry that momentum into this following week here, as we will be discussing the American Beauty, our feature stakes this week here at Oaklawn Park. But we're going to go over a lot here, as we had Southwest Day last Saturday here at Oaklawn with a large on-track presence. And Cody, I know you were here on track taking it all in. These big days at Oaklawn, there's not really too many other tracks that can duplicate that type of energy.
No, the fans show up here unlike anywhere else, and it was a great atmosphere, and we had a really good day.
Absolutely, and the good news is that we get to go over all this good racing here on Out of the Starting Gate. So on this week's Out of the Starting Gate, we're going to go over what you might have missed, or maybe just some thoughts about all those big stakes races we saw. Up-and-comers, we've got some horses that look like they could be potential stars that we'll be talking to you about. Our Southwest Stakes recap. There's a lot of ground to cover there, a lot going on in the Southwest, so we're going to dedicate a whole time slot just for the Southwest Stakes analysis. The American Beauty Stakes, of course, for filly and mare sprinters is this coming Saturday. We're going to talk about the main contenders there. And finally, Denny's Clocker pick. That's 15-1 on the morning line. So sometimes you can find those hidden gems just by the way horses are working. But we've got a lot of ground to cover, Cody. So let's get to it. What you might have missed. We're going to start talking about all the stakes races that we saw this past weekend. We had a Thursday card move from Monday last week. Obviously, the weather was poor last week and the week before, early in the week, and throughout the following week. And we're going to see Banishing right here on the screen winning the Byerly Turk Overnight Stakes. Got a 100 buyer for the effort, and before that race about a month ago, he got a 103 and an allowance win over Tejano Twist, who we'll mention later in the show. But Cody, Banishing, another big effort from him.
Yes, it was. Not often do you go from an allowance race to a stake race, and it's an easier race. So definitely running against Tejano Twist before, against the group he's in this time, it was a much easier race, and he showed it. He won by a few lengths.
He's really improved with time, and since moving to the David Jacobson barn, the Byerly Turk Overnight, an overnight stake for horses that have never won a sweepstakes. So they never won a stakes race. He was eligible for that, Cody. Very cleverly spotted by David Jacobson, but now you have to imagine if this horse can keep running like he is, he's going to be a major player come Count Fleet time.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tejano Twist won't like to run against him next time as well. So it was definitely a good spot. David Jacobson did a great job of finding that race.
And Banishing, of course, with that big buyer speed figure. And speaking of Tejano Twist, we'll get to him. Cody, he ran in the King Cotton Stakes for sprinters that have already won sweepstakes. Of course, you could throw a horse like Banishing in a race like that, but if you're eligible for a restricted stake, why not go there first? A little bit of an easier spot. Tejano Twist didn't have that option. 4 horses, Cody. Before this race, were you concerned about the small field with Tejano Twist?
Yes, especially the lack of speed with Hartman's other entrant, edge to edge. The way the race unfolded, though, it actually set up very well for Tejano Twist.
It did, and he showed a lethal turn of speed like he always does. Just, I think, one of the horses back here that has the biggest kick.
I agree. And Flavian Pratt gave him a great ride, and the race set up very well. He hit the front and middle of the stretch, and he looked like he just idled a little bit.
What do you think the key with him riding him is? Is it keeping him in the clear, keeping him going? Is he a start and stop horse? What do you think?
I think generally just don't make your move too soon on him because he has a massive turn of foot. He kind of has a burst, but you don't want to use that burst too early.
And Flavian Pratt, as you mentioned, timed it right, and that's why he's an Eclipse Award winner for rides like that time and time again. We'll talk about our next stake, Kinetic getting the job done for Godolphin. Flavian Pratt, Brad Cox, they had a big day on Southwest Day. And if you watch this replay here, Cody, you're going to see that Kinetic sort of labored a little bit. He looked like he was laboring, but I think that was just being a little goofy out there waiting for company.
Yeah, I think Flavian put him in the perfect spot to start with, and he might have hit the lead a little bit too soon. And once he hit the lead, he started goofing off, and I think he was just completely waiting on horses. I think there's a lot more ability there.
And there is a lot of ability given the fact that you had some pretty good horses behind him that were running professionally, running as hard as they could to get by him. And this horse was just sort of mocking him a bit, saying, "Come and catch me, guys. Why are you guys slowing down here?"
Yep, I completely agree.
I think that Kinetic is a horse that you're going to see as time goes on. If they can really get him to sort of turn the light bulb on fully, then he's going to be one who's going to be a major player in graded stakes races down the line. And the same can be said for the Wine Steward. This horse, of course, very impressive as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. He was grade 1 placed in the Breeders' Futurity as a 2-year-old, grade 3 placed in the Lexington and Peter Pan at 3. Before he ran in the Belmont, ran poorly and was given a vacation on the farm. But you can see here the Wine Steward finished nicely and easily outgamed a runner to his inside, Cody. A good way to start off the year, and I think a job well done by Mike Maker to get him fit, ready for this race.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good start to his 4-year-old year. Juan Hernandez put him in the perfect spot, start to finish for the mile races here. And he just overtook the Patriot Spirit, the pace setter, and from there it was over.
We talked about this off air yesterday, actually, when we were going out to dinner, and you mentioned that Juan put him in a perfect spot going the mile. What is the perfect spot in your eyes when you're getting a trip with a horse with tactical speed in these short wire finishes?
So the mile trip at Oaklawn, I think it's a very tactical race, and it's very important to be in the clear, maybe sitting second right off of the lead going a mile. And that was the position that Juan Hernandez was able to hold with him.
And the Wine Steward is a horse that, to me, seems like an in-betweener. He's probably not good enough to win a race like the Pegasus, beat a horse like White Abario, who won that race. But he's also not a bad horse. He's a stakes quality horse. Where do you think a trainer like Mike Maker aims this horse? Mile races, you think they're going to try to stretch him out? What's your view on this horse?
I would think that the Oaklawn mile here at Oaklawn would be awfully tempting and a good goal for him going forward. But he definitely has options because that horse could run further if he needed to. But I would think staying here for the lucrative Oaklawn mile would probably be a good idea.
And Mike Maker has strings all over the country, so he definitely has options and can ship horses wherever he sees fit them to ship. We'll also discuss a race that you won with Keith Asmussen, Lady Moscato, who is a very well-bred filly by Quality Road, put it all together in this stake event. Very workmanlike, I thought, Cody, but got the job done and kicked clear from the competition. She's always been a little bit inconsistent, but she picked a good day to run her best.
Yeah, I always joke that Keith speaks her language because he's ridden her 5 times. He's won 3 races. This was a different scenario than the last couple times. She was in the clear on the outside and was able to make a continuous run. And she was more forwardly placed than usual. The last couple times she'd been buried on the inside. And generally they want to try to, save horse with her rather than use it early, because she can get a little bit fast early if you let her. So I think, obviously Keith gets along with her well, and she ran a big race.
And now she has to face stakes company against non-restricted, like, for example, that race there, the Bugler Overnight, was for filly and mare sprinters that have never won a stakes. That's not the case with Lady Moscato, so she will need to take a step forward off of that.
Absolutely. She'll be in against the American Beauty types next time, which we'll get to in a little bit.
And she will, of course, get maybe an extra week before the next filly and mare sprint stake, as the American Beauty is this coming Saturday. And finally, before we get to the Southwest later on today, we've got one more stake to recap here. Take Charge, My Lady, in the Martha Washington Stakes, which awarded Kentucky Oaks points to the winner. And we mentioned on the show last week, Cody, how Take Charge, My Lady has just continued to improve, and she took another step forward.
She did big time. I think she also got a very clean trip. It was almost like the McPeak horses ran a tag team on the heavy favorite Quiet Side. Quiet Side did not get a very good trip in here.
And that's the next question. We talked about Take Charge, My Lady improving. She took that next step forward. She's getting better. She got an 84 Beyer, which is a career best for her. So it'll be fun to see if she can continue to progress and maybe really turn out to be a legit Kentucky Oaks type, because it looks like she can run all day as well. But Quiet Side went off favored, a grade 1 placed filly, making her 3-year-old debut last weekend off of freshening for trainer Johnny Ortiz in Shortleaf Stable, and did not get a good trip, as you said. Sort of got pinned in down inside and made an early move on the backstretch. What was your take on that overall effort after the bad trip?
I think she could potentially turn the tables on a Take Charge, My Lady going forward. She was buried on the inside. It seemed like the jock was always kind of in a hurry to get her out of there. And then when the other McPeak horse kind of interfered with her, it seemed like he just wanted to get out of there. And I don't necessarily think that helped her overall in the race.
And she doesn't seem like one that wants to start and stop too much. Like, you got to keep her going. Some horses are like those Ferraris or Jaguars where you can start and then stop if you need to, and they'll just click on, push button. But with her, she sort of did show that grinding running style, albeit she didn't have a good trip, but she's one that you want to keep going.
Yeah, I'm interested in her going forward. I think she basically made a too early move in the race that did not benefit her late. So.
And what did you make of Goel's Delight's trip? Because she sort of had an awkward break as well. She broke okay, but then on the backstretch run, she got shut off into the far turn run, and she was never able to really recover after that.
Yeah, I mean, she was almost ridden to interfere with the favorite almost. I mean, she tried to take her position early. They both made a move in between horses that didn't really benefit them. And, you know, overall, I mean, she's another one that if she gets a clean trip next time, she'll have a better effort than she ran the other day.
So not only was there a couple bad trips, but you think that could be a very strong race moving forward?
Take Charge My Lady is definitely going to be, you know, one of the ones to beat in the next round of races, but I think they could turn the tables on her for sure.
So we'll see some of them hopefully in the next prep, which is the Honeybee Stakes. That'll be on Rebel Day. Of course, you won the Honeybee last year with the maiden at that point, Lemon Muffin. And we go now to some future stars. Speaking of the future, let's get to it. Our up-and-comers list. And on these big weekends, Cody, we always seem to see these horses in the undercard races that can show us maybe a flash of brilliance or maybe just future stars. And we start with Rapture from the Brad Cox barn. Brad, of course, off to a little bit of a slow start at the meeting. He won 3 races on Saturday, and this was his first. Got an 82 buyer here against 3-year-olds going 2 turns in the WinStar White colors, also for China Horse Club. An interesting run because on the far turn, Flavian Pratt was really getting after this horse, and it took a while for him to finally kick in, and he kicked away nicely and showed a nice kick. And if you have time, folks, watch that gallop out because he galloped out full of run.
Yeah, monster gallop out. It seemed like it took Rapture a little bit of time to understand what Flavian was asking him to do, but once the light went on, he really kicked clear.
And he's by Uncle Mo, and Uncle Mo at the time is a racehorse. He was a bit notorious for maybe not being a full classic distance type of horse. He's been able to produce some horses that have gone long and gone classic distances, but he's also produced some that do have some distance limitations. But on the bottom side of Rapture's pedigree, out of a Bernardini mare, that says more distance. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think Uncle Mo can produce a classic distance horse as well. The main thing is they're usually ultra talented.
And we talk about Bernardini, a son of Bernardini. That is Good Boy next up here for trainer Norm Cassie. This horse kicked off his career with a maiden sprint win, and then he came back on Saturday in race number 1 to kick off the day, winning a small field of just 6 others against Allowance Company. But he's 2 for 2 to kick off his career, Cody, and for his first career route race, he got a 98 buyer, a huge number for this win here.
Yeah, he's ascending quickly. This was a very impressive race, I thought. Going from the sprint, it didn't look like he was getting going until late, and then going to mile 16th, he really turned it on the turn and kicked clear, and I really think that'll be beneficial going forward as more ground.
And I think we're going to see a horse. Last week we talked about Miss Hebrides, who is in a second level allowance, and we talked about her getting a nice first level allowance win. Same can be said for Baddest Good Boy. Do you feel that this is another one that maybe you try to get him through conditions before you get him in a stake?
Yeah, I think he's probably got one more allowance race to go before he jumps into stakes competition.
There will be a second level allowance that Pat Pope, our racing secretary, usually feels pretty good, so I can imagine we'll see him in that, assuming he stays healthy. Dreamin' Blue is one. He's intriguing. A 3-year-old now, going back to the 3-year-olds, a colt, sprinting in this race for trainer Randy Morris, a son of Street Boss. This horse had been knocking on the door for a win. He was last seen running second to Innovator, who came back to run third in the Lecomte at the Fairgrounds. And Dreamin' Blue put it all together last time sprinting and got an impressive number himself of a 94 buyer.
Yeah, this is a horse that Randy Morris has always really liked. He added blinkers on him, I believe, 2 starts ago, and him and Innovator came down right to the wire. This time he moved forward, he sat an inside trip and kicked clear when there was room.
So what's your take on this horse? Because now we're in interesting waters here, because uncharted waters, I should say, because you've got a horse here that's by Street Boss, who he can produce routers, but Street Boss himself was a real solid one-turn type of horse. You've got the Derby Trail. Maybe you try to stretch him out. What's your thoughts?
I think a horse of this talent, it's awfully tempting to stretch him out. And when I talked to Randy the other day, I think that was kind of on the agenda potentially. But him being my street boss and the way he runs sprinting, I would tend to think he's probably just a really good sprinter personally.
And Dreamin' Blue, of course, another one getting better as the racing has gone on. And finally, we got to give some love to the Arkansas breds for the Ron Moquett barn, or rather, Ron Moquett trained the sire, Petrov. But we'll talk about Ron's horse, Speed King, in just a little bit. But from the Randy Moore stable, Getting By with Ramon Vasquez aboard. Got a 55 buyer. A lot of these Arky breds, they don't get the type of numbers that maybe some of the open company runners do. But Getting By, he just got stronger as the race got longer, as Ed Burgard would say.
Yes, he had a visually impressive debut where he ran 5th against a potential or a stakes winner in Donut God. So going from open Kentucky bred competition to Arkansas bred competition was a big advantage, and he got away well. He did everything right, and he got going right at the end and drew away. So I think he's definitely a major player for the Rainbow Stakes here at Oaklawn.
And the Rainbow Stakes, of course, the big 3-year-old race for Arkansas breds later on in the season. These Petrovs, there's not a huge sample size of them. Of course, we just mentioned it. Ron Moquett trained Petrov. What was he as a racehorse, Cody? What kind of horse was he?
He's very well behaved, very smart. Took a lot of naps during the day.
Okay, there you
but
go.
also very talented. He was very consistent. I think he won over $500,000 in purses, and he was very good from 6 furlongs to a mile 16th. He could do it all.
So he had speed that he could stretch, and hopefully that carries into his babies. But Getting By one certainly looked like he had no problem going 6 furlongs, and he could get better as the distances get longer. But those are our 4 up-and-comers. Rapture, Baddest Good Boy, Dreamin' Blue, and of course Getting By. 2 of those runners trained by Randy Morse, and then you have a Norm Cassie in there, Baddest Good Boy, and of course Rapture. Brad Cox knows what a good 3-year-old is when he sees one, and certainly it looks like Rapture is another one to add to the list of horses that Brad Cox has on the Kentucky Derby Trail, which is a perfect segue into our next spot here, the Southwest Stakes. We've got a full race to show you here on the replay, and you're going to see right at the start, Sandman with a horrendous start. We'll talk about him in a little bit. You're also going to see here in just a bit, Gaming on the inside. Number 1 has to steady sharply into the first turn. But Cody, we're going to start with the race winner, Speed King, trained by Ron Moquett, ridden by your rider, Rafael Bejarano. A big reason why we wanted Cody back on the show today. Discuss this ride, first of all, because I thought it was a very good ride. Bejarano, he got this horse to settle, and they didn't go all that fast in the early stages, the first quarter mile, 3/8.
Yeah, I think his plan was to generally see how the horses from the inside break and also who shows their hand early. And when nobody showed their hand and a couple horses didn't break very well, he just went ahead and put them out there. And, you know, Speed King, he's fast, but he'll rate for you. And I think he came back to him good. He had to withstand an early race move from American Promise where they opened up substantially into the middle of the race into the turn. And then he finished the race off fairly solid, I thought.
I thought it was a better than looked effort as well, Cody, given that if you watch this race, approaching the far turn, Tyler Bacon was aboard American Promise for D. Wayne Lucas and made a bit of an early move, and that forced the hand of Speed King and Rafael Bejarano, and they went on with it and really quickened the pace. There was a third horse in this picture, Bon Temps, who backs away. But if you take out Bon Temps, who lost contact with the other 2, Speed King and American Promise are 7-8 lengths ahead of the rest of the field. So they're rolling on the far turn here. And Cody, I feel that maybe if this early move was not produced by American Promise, then Speed King would have been able to settle even more and have even more finish down the lane.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was actually more impressive the more I've watched it, how much they separated and the fact he was able to withstand it.
He could either be in the Rebel or the Arkansas Derby, and all signs indicate that this horse has exited the Southwest Stakes in good order. What's your take on that?
I'm sure Ron will do whatever's best for him. Ron tends to generally run horses rather than train, so we'll see. I would imagine he probably shows up in the Rebel.
And a great story. Ted Bowman, a local. A lot of folks have picked up on this story. Triton Thoroughbreds. He's the managing partner of an ownership group called Triton Thoroughbreds, who, of course, purchased Speed King for $100,000 as a youngster. And just a really cool story. You get not a huge mega stable. Ron has a good chunk of horses, no doubt, but he's not the Brad Cox, Todd Pletchers of the world either in terms of size. And you've got a owner like Ted Bowman, who is obviously been in the game for a long time, 19 years, very special.
Yes, big time. They've been together for a long time. It's the same connections as Seat Gold, who Ron won the Stephen Foster with at 90-1. So
Wow.
it's pretty full circle.
And Ted, of course, probably still on cloud nine. Not necessarily on cloud nine, but an encouraging run from Sandman. The connections might not be on cloud nine with Sandman, but they have to be encouraged with what they saw. You saw it earlier, just a horrendous break. But this horse could have just folded it in and just said, I've had enough, hoisted the white flag, but ended up running second. And what a lot of people take out as a major, major storyline in this race, that this horse was able to recover and run well.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him coming into this race. I think he would probably have been the horse that I'd have relied on the most. He comes from off the pace to start with, so even though he took that weird, funny second step that cost him so much, he was going to come off the pace regardless, and he got a very good setup. So I'm not as crazy about him as a lot of people are coming out of this race. I think he got a good setup, and sure, the start hurt him, but I don't think it really hurt him all that much, personally.
If he had broke well, just uneventfully, do you think that he would have still been relatively far back, or do you think he would have been a lot closer? Maybe not in the beginning, but let's just say on the backstretch.
I would have think by the way the race played out, that if he'd have broke well, he'd have probably been around where Gaming and Publisher were. And so he'd been a touch closer, but who knows if he'd have finished as well either, because he's also using that much more energy in the race rather than lagging back and making a run.
And Mark Cassie indicating he is projecting this horse to enter in the Rebel as long as he is healthy. So I'm thinking, Cody, possibly this horse goes off in an underlayer. There are going to be a lot of people betting him.
Yeah, I'm interested in others personally. I think he's going to be overbet, and I don't know if he necessarily replicates that performance.
One horse that's always been a workmanlike but pretty solid horse himself is Tiztastic, who your jockey Keith Asmussen rode to a third place finish. Just nipped Patch Adams for the third spot. And just another really solid effort. He got the right trip, and he is one that I think you got to take a look at. Let's talk about his effort, because I was impressed. I mean, this horse was coming off a freshening, and I think based on who he's run against as the 2-year-old against a really tough field here in the Southwest, an above-average group, I thought he took a step forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is his first start as a 3-year-old, and I'm sure just a stepping stone, hopefully, to the Kentucky Derby. So I don't know if he was necessarily cranked up 100% for this start. In his trip, he went from close to the pace right behind Bon Temps and Speed King to lagging back to midfield to the back of the field, and then sustained a rally later into the race to pick up third.
Very good effort, again, very workmanlike. And if Cody's projection is correct there, that maybe he wasn't fully cranked, Steve likes to run. I'm sure he'll be very much considered for the Rebel. He could possibly run a little bit better next time out. One horse that sort of scratched the heads of viewers was Patch Adams, and this horse, of course, the favorite of the race, went off at a very low odds favoritism after a big win going 1 turns at Churchill Downs. This horse took a little bit of a bobble out of the gate, Cody, but at the same time, he had plenty of time to recover and make up some ground. But he was third last early, so calling the race immediately, the first thing I thought is, I'm surprised this horse is this far back. But he never really kicked on. He got that second quarter mile, a fast pace to run into in the third quarter, and he just sort of grinded along.
Yeah, I thought he got a very clean trip from Flavian Pratt. Turning for home, he actually got into second place and looked like he was going to make a run, but he flattened out. I didn't really think he had much excuse.
I just wonder where they're going to send this horse next. Do they keep him on the Derby trail? Do they cut him back? What's your feelings on that?
Well, Brad has options for sure, and the horse is ultra talented. I don't know if necessarily the 2 turns is what he really wants to do, but going forward, he's definitely got a lot of options.
And I feel like if he did want to go 2 turns, he'd show a little bit more of a kick, especially given just how impressive he was in that maiden win. And of course, we need to mention Gaming, a horse for the Bob Baffert barn. Of course, Bob has won this race 6 times. He didn't get a 7th this past Saturday. And this horse, out of the gate, he broke a little bit slow, didn't stumble, but just a tad slow. But then approaching the first turn run, he pretty much bumped into the rail when he got in real tight, had to slam on the brakes. And after that, I think this horse has said, I've had enough for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. This horse got into a bunch of trouble into the first turn, and from there just never really picked up his feet.
Of course, we will see the next big prep here for the Kentucky Derby with those points, more points given out in the Rebel in late February. And that's the Southwest. A lot to unpack there, plenty of trips to discuss. And if you want to find more, all you got to do is watch that replay, and it's going to tell you a lot of stories for a lot of different horses. One more horse I did want to mention, Cody, is Publisher, a horse that was a maiden in the race, the second Steve Asmussen entrant, a bit of a peculiar entry. And this horse, turning for home, was actually making up a little bit of ground. American Promise was getting tired after making that early move. He drifted in, and Publisher was lucky to stay on his feet. He clipped heels, hit the rail, and almost went down. Eric Asmussen doing a good job to stay on him. But he definitely would have finished a little bit more forward if that would have not occurred.
Yeah, he was making his move with Patch Adams. I think he would have got a piece of it had he not had the horse stop in front of him. I think American Promise also had a pretty big excuse as well for he didn't break at the gate and then showed speed, chased Speed King around there and got tired. So I think overall both of them had a pretty big excuse, and both are useful horses going forward.
And of course, Dwayne Lucas not scared to go for the gold running these big races, and with American Promise having good pedigree and also just being a high-priced purchase, I would imagine they're not going to give up with him just yet. They're going to run him in a stake next time.
I would think so. I mean, if he goes a mile and an eighth and breaks better and gets in a more natural gait, I imagine he's going to run a lot better race than he ran on Saturday.
That's the Southwest Stakes. They went a mile and a 16th, and of course Speed King earning 20 points to the Kentucky Derby, and he actually picked up a few points with his runner-up finish in the Springboard Mile at Remington, and that race was won none other by Cole Battle, who won the Smarty Jones. So I'm imagining now folks that are really rooting for Cole Battle, a small barn, small trainer, and Lonnie Briley, you're looking at a pretty good flattering effort from Speed King there, knowing that Cole Battle beat him. Even though Speed King actually ran a much better than looked race at the Springboard Mile, Cole Battle looks a little bit better now.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a good matchup in the Rebel if everybody shows up. And Cole Battle is definitely flattered by Speed King's performance.
So there you go. It's just a great time to be thinking about the Kentucky Derby with our 3-year-olds in the wintertime and heading towards the spring every year. This is when folks start to get Derby fever. We're expecting Cole Battle to run in the Rebel, possibly Speed King, definitely Sandman. They're projecting. There's whispers that maybe Barnes, who won the San Vicente at 7 furlongs for Bob Baffert, a $3 million purchase. There are whispers that he may be showing up for the Rebel because it's very likely they're going to send him out of town, and when they're not at Santa Anita, usually the real good ones are right here in Arkansas at Oaklawn Park. So here at Oaklawn, this is where the top 3-year-olds come to play, and we saw that last year as well with Mystic Dan and Torpedo Anna winning the Derby and Oaks, respectively. This coming week, we've got 4 racing days, Thursday through Sunday, and Saturday our feature race is the American Beauty for filly and mare sprinters. We've got 7 entered in there. We're going to go over the main contenders, and I think the most intriguing entrant is a supplemental entrant in Tax. Now, this filly, earlier in her career, the connections and probably a lot of the public always thought that this filly would be a little bit better going or out of ground. Of course, she won the Black-Eyed Susan as a 3-year-old, and Taxed. Her only sprint we've seen recently was last year off a layoff, and she was very impressive. They've tried routing her time and time again, and she keeps picking up paychecks but not winning. And now Randy Morse has got to cut her back. She wasn't nominated originally for this race, but he's putting her in there, and this is a really interesting move.
I think it's an intriguing idea. She's kind of not been as consistent going long as of late for whatever reason. But like you said, her sprint races are powerful, and that might just wake her up here.
Benedetta for Kaleem Shah is probably the horse to beat in the race and probably the strongest of any of the nominees on the page. Now, you look at her races, she's sort of the now horse. She's won 3 in a row. She won a Mahoning Valley stake last time out, and now Steve's putting her in this stakes bunch here. Looks like the one that could very well be favored in this race.
Yeah, I agree. She gets a good post, and she's not going to be far off the pace. So Taxed, for instance, will have to run her down, and hopefully Keith can get his second stakes win.
That's right, Keith Asmussen aboard Benedetta for his father, Steve. And then, of course, you ride a lot for Chris Hartman. He's got 2 in there. Rafael Bejarano's on one of them. We'll talk about her in just a second. But the first one we're going to mention is Fibber with apprentice Tyler Bacon. And Fibber last time out ran second. Good effort, a little bit of an unlucky trip, and was second best in the last stake here. But ran very well, I thought.
Yeah, I think unlucky is the right word to use. She draws the rail again today. And she also has an apprentice, rider on her now that doesn't get the weight. So it could be another tricky trip that he's going to have to figure out.
She's drawn towards the inside, and so is the other entrant, Tanya Showers, who we mentioned off air, Cody. For you, maybe a little bit disappointing in the Bugler Overnight Stakes. She actually ran on Southwest Day. What are the prospective vibe of her running in this race, wheeling back quick?
I thought she had a big chance in the Bugler, and I was underwhelmed with her performance, but watching it again, I mean, she was not that far off from running second, really. I mean, she ran fifth, but she was only about a length off running second, so maybe it was a better effort than I really give it credit for. And overall, the quality of this race, I think she fits with them.
And Tanya Showers, of course, one that would be wheeling back in 8 days. Is that a concern if she does?
I wouldn't say it's a concern if Chris does it. I think if Chris runs her, he's definitely going to be confident in her.
There's 7 runners in the American Beauty. That's on Saturday here at Oaklawn, of course, out of the starting gate, sponsored by Oaklawn Park. One more segment to go here, folks. We're going to wrap this up with Denny's Clocker pick of the day, and I'm looking for a horse that's working really well, and you're going to see on the screen here, Kentucky Smoke Show for the Chris Hartman barn. Speaking of Chris, he's got one here that's working like a champ, I think, in the mornings. As you can see here, she's outside of a workmate going a minute and change, and this is the definition of a breezing work. She is cruising under the line here, and I think that there's more in the tank, and I think at 15-1, just based off of her works alone, on paper she looks like she should be 15-1, but she is one that is working like a filly, that's ready to run a good race off of freshening here, and I actually saw her in another workout on Oaklawn.com, and she looked really, really good there as well. So Kentucky Smoke Show, she'll be running in an allowance race later this week. You're going to make sure to tune into that and make sure to watch her, because I think she could run well based off of those works. Cody Caudill, jockey agent for Rafael Bejarano and Keith Asmussen. I'm track announcer here at Oaklawn, Matt Dinerman. This is Out of the Starting Gate. Our episode 2 has been completed, recapping Southwest, giving you some up-and-comers, and talking about all the stakes action from last week on Southwest Day. More fun to be had Thursday through Sunday racing here at Oaklawn, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Out of the Starting Gate with Matt Dinerman, presented by Oaklawn Park.